This regular Medicine Hat City Council meeting of May 1st, 2023 is called to order at 6:30 p.m. We will begin with a moment for prayer or reflection. Thank you. I will now read the land acknowledgement for the city. The City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationships with the land. Next up is councillor announcements. I do have one. Do any other councillors have an announcement for today? Okay, so we are going to present the Government Finance Officers Association Awards. This was mentioned in a previous council meeting. The City of Medicine Hat is once again the recipient of Government Finance Officers Association Awards for the year ending 2021. These awards are a testament to the hard work of staff. Council would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Director Lola Barda, who's up there, and the finance team for receipt of the Canadian Award for Finance Reporting for the 20th year in a row. And then Chair of Audit Committee, Councillor Hirsch, will be presenting you with the award if you'd like to come down. And Council would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Director Colleen Graham and in the Corporate Communications team for receipt of the Popular Annual Financial Report Award for the 10th year in a row. So if you could come down. Congratulations for the award, and thank you for your entire teams, both of them, hard work throughout the year. Thank you. Councillor Hirsch, do you have anything that you would like to add? I'm really putting you on the spot here. I apologize.
No, just for those of you that are not aware of what the GFOA, it's a pretty esteemed award given to municipalities that do a high level of excellence in regards to financial reporting. And the award that Colleen got is the format from which the information was being shared in a very straightforward, filled with pictures and a very nice format in terms of how the events of the year unfolded. So just acknowledgement of some really good work at the City of Medicine Hat.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6, adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or objections to the agenda? Seeing none, we will adopt the agenda as presented and move on to the adoption of the minutes of regular meeting of City Council, April 17th, 2023. Any errors or omissions to report? Seeing none, we will adopt the minutes. Our first item of business is new business, and it is Medicine Hat Curling Club funding request, and it's sponsored by Public Services. I will provide Managing Director Stouth an opportunity to provide some background.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair, You have a decision item in front of you regarding consideration of funding for the Medicine Hat Curling Club to replace their ice plant and install temporary ice mats. They had a failure in the slab system causing a brine leak, and they've also had a subsequent failure of the ice plant. These items are in need of replacement. The ice plant and the ice mats take some time to get in. There's some lead time on that to get in the queue and get these items procured. I do want to bring forward to Council's attention the briefing note speaks to a recommendation of support through interest-free loan. And if Council decides to travel that path, I do have a procedural error, if you want to call it that. That would require Council to direct administration to present a bylaw for a loaning of money to the curling club. So if Council chooses to go the interest-free loan path, then we would have to prepare a bylaw, a lending bylaw, and bring back to Council, which I think we can do at the next Council meeting. Of course, Council has the authority to choose whatever level of funding they would choose to endorse in this situation. That could be to not support the project at all, to granting the curling club money for the entire amount. The recommendation does speak to supporting them through an interest-free loan to cover off the amount that they cannot raise through grant funding, insurance proceeds, and fundraising efforts that they currently have in progress. So with that, I will close my remarks, and if Council chooses to, as I say, to choose the path of an interest-free loan, then there is a motion prepared that could put that on the floor. Thank you.
I will get to Councillor Van Dyke. Does anyone want to make a motion at this time?
It's come from Public Services, so I'm happy to do so. I move that Council directs administration to prepare a loan bylaw for Council's consideration for the purpose of supporting the installation of a new temporary ice plant and ice mats at Medicine Hat Curling Club. It is slightly different than, I think, what was in the agenda we had received on Friday, but because we require a loan bylaw to be able to do that.
Second. Thank you. Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I'm just wondering if administration could give a little explanation on why they settled on this recommendation versus option number 4.
For clarity, option number 4 is to fund the entire amount upfront, taking payment back from the curling club once grant funding, insurance proceeds, and initial fundraised amounts are known, interest-free loan created on the balance owing. Go ahead, Managing Director Stouth.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair to Councillor Van Dyke. Part of the recommendation involved limiting the financial exposure of the city in assisting the curling club. So that's the reason the recommendation was written the way it was presented. Certainly option 4 is an option of council to debate as well.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you. Through the chair to the city manager. I did have a technical question, not so much with this, but when we're going through the briefing note and there's mention of the funding towards the ice plants, is there any reason we can't use the existing ice plant in the arena?
Managing Director Stouth.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair to Councillor Sharps. That was evaluated by facilities management, and the ice plant in the arena has a number of corroded elements in it, and it isn't recommended for reuse in any location.
City Manager Mitchell, did you? Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Sharps?
Not at this moment, but I may.
Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Can I just clarify that this is an appropriate time to state my opinion and not just ask questions?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go at this from a social, emotional perspective first, and then talk about my opinion in regards to funding. So I think that if we look at the state of our community as well as the worldwide community over the span of our shutdown and COVID-19, there was a great impact on people when they couldn't do what they were passionate about. And I see this as something that many of us may not be passionate about, but it's important that we remind ourselves of what we're here to do, which is provide services to the people in the community. And the curling club may not necessarily be the entire community, but it's part of our community. And if we decide not to go ahead and support the curling club in whatever capacity they require, then I think we're doing a disservice to a passionate group of people who are involved in a community that helps their well-being. And when it comes to the financial piece, I think that I would like to see as much effort as possible from this organization in regards to fundraising, which I know they have stated is their plan. And I would also like to, I'd like to see what other council members have to say in regards to the current recommendation, but I, at this point, feel that I've voiced my, my perspective as to whether or not we should fund it, and I think we should certainly fund the request.
Councillor Hirsch.
Well, I'll give you my opinion. And I want to separate the item that's in front of us in terms of the curling club and just speak to the fact that we have a multitude of service groups out in the community. Some that we know that lease facilities from us, some that don't, some that have managed to create a thriving atmosphere in the absence of city support. And that's not what I'm getting at here. What I am getting at here is I had a little bit of frustration, certainly not with the presenter, but certainly with the presentation, and I'll tell you why. There's a couple things, like a relative, I look at the slab that was talked about that had a 50-year horizon, in fact was used for 65 years. And I think to myself, okay, if that's the case and it's a major part of the infrastructure, do we have a reserve facility? Do we have funding available that says, okay, that slab's done, here's the money that we saved and we raised for the next iteration? And I just didn't necessarily see it. And that's not lost on me. The reality is that there's many organizations that have board of directors that mean well and they are passionate. But the reality of the situation is that we find ourselves as the city medicine hat coming and in some cases and coming up with a strategy to fix the problem that created. And this group's not the only one. It was a few years back, or if not, quite a few years back, we had another funding group that had irrigation problems. And so for me, I kind of look at it going, okay, this is your, whatever we would decide to do tonight. I appreciate the passion, but I think, which I've already indicated to staff, is that if we can have some kind of understanding or a little bit of oversight or a little bit of guidance to the service groups to say, okay, whatever your passion is, have you got enough put aside for future development? And I think that's fair from a taxpayer point of view, and certainly fair guidance for the service groups that support each other. I've curled in the past. I enjoy the sport, and I don't have a problem with it per se. What my challenge is the reality of if every service group came up to us and said, we need help, it would just be a massive, massive undertaking. And I don't live in the world of surprises, and neither should anyone else. So that's just my feedback with that. I understand one of the presentations was talked about in terms of funding and that sort of thing. A lot of it was to be determined and stuff like that. So for me, it was just my feedback would be to all service groups and clubs, you know, make sure you kind of have some analysis in terms of whether or not you're funded adequately. And that might mean having tough discussions with members to say, you know, in order for us to continue with this sport, we need to have some fundraising and et cetera, and infrastructure, and maybe it looks at fees and that sort of thing. So that's just it in general. It isn't a condemnation in terms of curling or the sport or what the passion is up in the crowd right now. It's just my observation. Thank you.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. Through the chair, my comments probably aren't much different than Councillor Hirsch's. This is a big ask, I think, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of close to our beginning of our term. We had a number of service clubs that are located up in Briar Park, and they just wanted to extend their lease. And they've never been to us for funding that I'm aware of. They just want to be left alone. And so I think this is similar. You have a city-owned property with assets owned by the curling club, and we similarly had another group come to us and say, you know, we need some money, and my thought then was, are we sowing a good arm on a decaying body, or is this good investment for the money? And the other thing I wonder is, I should have been able to do the math, but I was just kind of thinking about it now, is how much is it costing us per year to lend that, to actually give that money away interest-free when we actually have an investment account? So I'm sure there's some people here that could answer that question and give us an estimation, but I'm reluctant only because of all of the other clubs that if they run into the same issues, how are we going to continue to fund them? And maybe there's an answer to that, and I'd invite an answer, but I'm really concerned about, and there's a number of them. We were given a list of all the different pieces of property the city owns that has clubs that are kind of on them and different types of arrangements and agreements. And I would feel a whole lot better if we had a more standard approach to how we're going to help all these different people with their assets when they run into problems like they are right now. And they're my comments for now, and I'm going to keep an open mind until it's time to vote. Thank you.
So you had two questions. One was, is there a process coming? And the other was, what amount of money are we losing on, because we're not investing the money? Is that?
Yes, thank you. That would be two of my questions. Thank you.
City Manager Mitchell?
We are working on a process, but it will take a bit of time internally because we're trying to also finish facilities for the future, which I think is pretty critical and has been waiting for a long time. In the meantime, to everybody's comments, but also thinking about this, we need to either facilitate or help, because I think some of the nonprofit or service groups or volunteer groups that we see in this community that do such great work, it's critically important that we help them somehow, whether it's ourselves or another outside entity, figuring out how to be financially responsible, also figuring out the governance piece, because a lot of people that are volunteering their time, this is outside their regular scope. So that's something we're working on internally too, whether it's our organization who does it or another organization, but facilitating it with those groups. But in the meantime, yes, we do need a process, and yes, it is coming. Thank you.
Councillor McGrogan, do you have a follow-up? No? Councillor Sharps.
I had one more question before I voiced my opinion. On option number 4, it does say fund the entire amount up front, taking back from the curling club once grant funding insurance proceeds. Did we get clarification from last council meeting that that could in fact be done? Because we were going to check. If the curling club applies for a grant and the funding goes to them, are they able to actually write us a check for the proceeds?
Managing Director Stouth?
As long as it's not loan repayment, yes.
Would this not be loan repayment?
If we funded them the money before we structured a loan, it would not be loan repayment.
So if we structured it part grant, part loan, is that what I'm hearing? So it's not all loan?
If we funded them the money so they could proceed with the project, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Sharps, if we funded them the money before we had the grant application and knew exactly how much we were going to structure as an interest-free loan, it wouldn't be a loan repayment yet. So they could return some funding to the city.
So then, would that bylaw be, or would that motion be accurate? Because we're directing administration to prepare a loan bylaw.
And the motion says to direct administration to prepare a loan bylaw for the purposes supporting the installation of new temporary ice plant. The bylaw can be created, but until the loan's created, there is no loan.
Would we be able to expand this motion to include such verbiage that we get that funding, if they get it? I just think that there's a whole level of information not put into this, because I'm sure they want to hand us over the check, but it's just something that we as a city should be very clear on our intention.
We could add in accordance with the briefing, the financial impact section of the briefing note. City Manager Mitchell?
Yes, through the chair, thank you. Just the other thing too is that the bylaw will also, it's my understanding, have a funding agreement with it that outlines everything, but the mayor's correct. If we put that piece in there, it should give the clarity that I think council's seeking.
Perfect. And then just my comments. So I agree with what Councillor Hirsch and Councillor McGrogan have said about other clubs coming to us. And I'm going to be honest, ever since this has hit the agenda, other clubs have sent me emails. Some of them are in the gallery today asking for additional funding. And I get it, but I am also of the mind that this is our community. And I have been curling once. It probably should never have happened. It was horrible. But I do think that councils and local administration, that is our job, is to make sure that our community has recreational facilities, things for the youth to do, things for adults to do, seniors to do. And to me, this is part of what our community is, everything from rec centers to curling to drag racing to rifle clubs. I'm a big believer that those are all the things that make our community. Some of them get funding, some of them don't. Some of them don't require funding. So I don't believe the curling club's coming out here, in my mind, with their hand out because they have nothing better to do. This is one of our facilities that we have to take some responsibility on. And in my mind, I mean, I have rental properties and I don't get to say, oh, I forgot to look at that. I mean, this is just part of ownership and we have to check this stuff out. And I think this new administration looks at it differently, and I think that we will have those plans going forward. So I am very much in support of supporting the curling club. I also see continued efforts on their part to make sure that this is viable, and because I see those continued efforts, I would like to support them.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, I have a few things to say. It's difficult to sit here and think about, and I guess coming from public services, we maybe hear a lot more, and to think of how to balance the needs of all of the recreational groups in the city. We talk a lot about wanting to treat the groups equally, but this standardized approach, you'd think it would be simple, but agreements have been made with different groups across this city by people not at this table, and frankly, not at that table either. And so we're sort of, in some ways, stuck with those agreements, and it's really hard to standardize them, so I appreciate that's a Herculean effort, and I'm sure our city manager is capable of it, but good luck to you, ma'am, good luck to you. I can only look at this request in front of us, because that's all I have to consider today, and it is a very large sum of money. This is not a small grant that's been requested. I really appreciated, and I got to see the presentation from Mr. Hauserman twice, once in public services and then once here. And I really appreciated the long history and stewardship shown by the curling club in Medicine Hat. I also noted, as he went through his presentation, that they've utilized previous grant funding before, so been successful grant writers, which is always good to hear, and also loaned from the city to make improvements, including a roof, which is no cheap thing to replace, as we all know. I certainly have heard Councillor Hirsch about anticipating the slab would eventually fail. We were in the same situation as council with the Moose, which is a city-run facility, so I appreciate that we had required a budget amendment, and that was as a pivot of the results of this council changing what the plans had been in previous council, or at least some of the discussion. So I'm not placing any blame on facilities management at all here. I'm just saying we were sort of in the same boat where we had to make hard decisions that cost a lot of money about our own slab, which was replaced and now used all the time. I am supportive of this support to the curling club at the amount requested. And I am supportive because of these specific reasons. I think there's been a lot of creativity and research into the options available. And so you've put to us that you're going to buy ice mats and a ice plant that have resale value and good resale value, which means that money will come back into the city and repay some of this amount. Fundraising, insurance proceeds, and of course your own grant application, that you're not just coming to the horseshoe here to say, we need this money. You're saying, we need this money, but here's all of our plans to repay that money. Because I think that what I get from the presentation is you appreciate this is money that belongs to the citizens of Medicine Hat. A smaller group is asking to use it, and you're going to do everything you can to repay it. And I think that is something different than just asking for money. I think it shows such a respect for the citizens and what they need. I look forward to many years of curling. I have a story somewhat a little bit like Councillor Sharp's, except the last time I was in the curling club curling, I knocked myself unconscious. This is, and you can look horrified. It was, my glasses flew off. My bruise was up here. It was horrible. So I will not be joining anyone of the, I have no skin in the game here. I am not allowed to curl anymore. But I really appreciated always the welcome that I received there and how everything was, my grilled cheese sandwich and fries as I watched my nieces curl was pretty good too. So I do support it. I do note just one last thing, and it was I forget who said it, but it was someone at Public Services. We have lots of ice in the city that the city owns and manages and cares for. Curling ice has not traditionally in our history been part of that. But it's important to know that the city does provide ice and rents it to different ice groups. And so this sort of balances that out in just a different sport, ice-related sport. So I will be supporting the motion.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this as well. I didn't have the opportunity to hear the presentation at last council meeting as I was away, but I was brought up to speed. Thinking and reflecting on the motion before us, or at least a proposed motion, when I think about this is really about investing and having confidence in a user group to make the best of this situation and move forward. The lessons, I will argue, that have been spoken to around the table already about planning for the future, investing, putting funds away, I know is always well-intended, but historically has been a problem. And not because the membership is not willing to do that, but because when you're living in the immediacy of the day and things are good, you don't necessarily think about putting away a lot of money for replacement in the future. But I'm less concerned about what precedents this could set, only because I firmly believe and have come to appreciate that we have been doing much of the same for other user groups over many years. So we built a new recreation center now known as the Co-op Place, not just for the Tiger WHL team, but for many multitude of other reasons at significant investment. Pickleball is another good example where there was participation and fundraising, but investment on the part of the city and a commitment into their vision for a new sport and a growing sport. Swim clubs have the opportunity to be a club, charge fees, leverage fees, do their thing at the expense or of tax-supported swimming facilities. We have even more unique ones, pathways. I don't know what we have nowadays, 150 kilometers worth of pathways for those who choose to recreate outdoors. Now, some of those paths were built for different purposes, but they do have the intended purpose for those who want to be outdoors. Baseball diamonds have been developed and refurbished over time to support baseball in our community, a growing and vibrant sport as well, soccer fields, and on it goes. What makes this one a little bit unique or difficult is that they have largely been self-serving for many years. Again, the land is owned by the city, but the facility is owned by the curling club, and so it feels a little bit disconnected. I will allow myself to argue that it is much like the other groups. What I would hope, though, is when I see that there's a desire for them to do fundraising over time to secure a portion of the funds. My only worry there is, and I've seen it around the table over time, when there is a fundraising effort for a facility after it's been announced or funded, it's very difficult to be motivated or to get people to contribute because the funds are already secured. And our commitment, if we move forward, is to backstop any shortfall. And so that said, it's in writing. We see a crowd here today. We've heard from the membership that they are committed to doing this. And you know what? I think the opportunity is yours to seize. And I think it behooves council today to do our part. So I will be in support.
Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. I do support the motion brought forward by Councillor Robbins. I too sit on, new to the Public Service Committee, which I'm very excited about. I've said this before, I am not a curler either, but I really appreciate the age range that you can be involved in this sport. As we all know, children are more and more at risk every day, and I love the opportunity to see a couple kids up there and have them have that passion about a sport. I've wrestled with this decision because I am educated by my dear friend Darren Hirsch about money. There's just something about investing in our community, and that's what I want to do. One thing I'd like to make sure that we do is we have a curling rink, I don't know what you call them, ice sheets, teed up in our plan for facilities of the future. What better could it be as a couple slabs of hockey rink and a beautiful curling rink? So that's what I'd like to see in the future from our city administration, and I will be in support of the recommendation from Councillor Robbins.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you, and through the chair. So I share quite a few of Councillor Hirsch's thoughts on being fiscally responsible and planning for the future and putting money aside. But I also understand that the curling club is coming to us today in an emergency capacity, that without this funding, they would not be able to operate. So it's not like when we lose a sheet of ice in a ice rink in the city and there's still several others. This is the only one existing in our community. And I know the curling club members are having to travel right now to keep up with their leagues. And so I appreciate that without this, there's the very real chance that this club would cease to exist in our community. And it's hard to imagine a community of our size on the prairies not having a curling club facility. So I support this. And I just wanted to also say that I was very impressed with the presentation done by the club. I appreciated the history that was shared, as well as the planning and forethought that went into how this situation was going to be remedied. But I also really appreciated how community-focused this group is and how you've made your facility accessible to other organizations in the city in your off-season. I think that's really commendable and shows how community-minded you all are. So thank you very much.
Managing Director Stouth.
Thank you, Your Worship, and if I could, I had just looked up some information regarding Councillor Sharp's first question about the ice plant at the arena. Is it okay if I give some supplemental information?
Yes, please do.
I just looked back for some correspondence, so I'll just read you what one of our HVAC and controls technician wrote about the ice plant at the old arena. One of the compressors would definitely probably not be worth salvaging as it has lost the nitrogen holding charge. The other two may be salvageable and usable depending on their power supplies, et cetera. The chiller barrel, surge tank, and pumps are scrap as they will be corroded too badly. Then I'd also just like to read a recent piece of information from our facilities management folks regarding the arena ice plant and the possibility of using it at the curling club. In the end, it was decided the size and condition of the available components were inappropriate for transfer, with the cost to relocate these pieces and rehab them being a poor value versus new, and a formal request was never received from the club for a donation. And it says a formal request. I can tell you that the curling club manager and our facilities people did have conversations about the use of the arena ice plant, but our folks determined it wasn't a feasible move. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Hirsch.
Well, Your Worship, the question was asked in terms of what maybe we're foregoing with regard to our investments, and I just did quick math. On a $752,000 loan, prime right now is 6.7%. It's roughly around $50,000 a year on the 752, and if we fund the whole at $100,000, so it's just double. So $100,000 would be foregoed in terms of revenue in an interest-free. One other thing I wanted to state, which Councillor Dumanowski pointed out, I'm really on the fence on this, as you can probably tell. This will be, quite frankly, for any service group that gets money funded with the idea that, hey, if you can't make it, we were going to fund the rest. It's really a test of integrity. And whether or not the curling club or any kind of group that comes forward to us is willing to really stand up and do the fundraising and what's taken. So this is not just the curling club. This is almost a note to many different groups that are out there. I'm just worried about precedents. I'm worried about, again, the curling club will have to probably entertain people, make comments out in the community in regards to this as well. So it's just not a shared issue just with the city council. It's with the club as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just with respect to your comments, Managing Director Stouth, was that correspondence made, or the discussions with the curling club made when the arena was first shut down? I think we've heard that ice plants are fairly valuable. That would have been, I think, the time to repurpose.
Looking back on some of that conversation was in December of 2019. December of 2019.
Thank you. This probably isn't the appropriate time to dive into that discussion further, but I think it's worth discussing a little more. I agree with almost everything that's been said. We are stewards of public dollars, and so we need to make sure that we spend them wisely. This is a facility that's on city land, so where it comes to our leases, we have an obligation as well to ensure that the parties leasing from us are maintaining their facilities, and we're aware of what capital investments might need to be made. But this is, as I see it, an interim plan that allows the club to continue to operate within our city and continue to provide value to our city while we work on facilities for the future plan that may include curling as part of our suite of facilities, or may not, but we shall see. No? Okay. Seeing no further questions City Manager Mitchell.
Just for clarity, is the resolution going to stay as is, or are we putting that other piece in it?
I haven't received a motion on that.
Okay.
I'm certainly willing to entertain a friendly amendment to my motion that adds at the end, pursuant to the financial information in the briefing note. Was that cover what we were concerned about?
Councillor Sharps?
I would make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there, that's a friendly amendment, you said, so we will just add it, and we will vote on the motion as amended. And that's unanimous. So I will, oh, I'm not sure what happened there.
It showed yes.
It was unanimous. It was unanimous. So that motion is passed. And I will give anyone who wants to exit an opportunity to do so now. City Manager Mitchell.
And just for council's awareness, we will bring this back to the May 15th meeting, the bylaw and the agreements.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, that should have been in the motion too, probably. That's okay. All right, next up on the agenda, we had a few people stay. That's awesome. We have public hearings. So this is item number 9, and it is with respect to bylaw 4778 to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the subject lands from medium-density residential district to community services district. So we'll have a brief introduction by city staff. Then I'll call the meeting to order. We can then ask if any questions of the, or make any comments other than opinions during the public hearing. All right. We have Robert Sissons, Manager, Planning and Development Services, to provide us with an introduction. Welcome. You're becoming a regular.
So thank you, Your Worship. I'm here to present a brief summary of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 4778, a rezoning of Lot 14, Block D, Plan 99-11151 to Community Services District. So our role within Planning and Development Services as the regulator is to review applications, understand any technical constraints, and provide a recommendation through the Municipal Planning Commission to City Council for decision. So this is a technical amendment and is for the rezoning of the subject site from medium-density residential district to community services district. The rezoning is to ensure consistent zoning across a parcel that is currently undergoing consolidation. So lot consolidation is a process done through Alberta land titles, and it's typically performed by an Alberta land surveyor. The city does not regulate or approve lot consolidations, but it is important that when the city is made aware of a lot consolidation, that the appropriate actions are taken to rectify split zoning scenarios where they exist. So consolidation of properties can create a single parcel that has two separate districts known as split zoning, and split zoning is not a best practice and can create future non-compliance issues within the land use bylaw, which may have potential impacts on any existing or future development. To ensure consistent zoning across the single fee simple parcel, rezoning a portion of the site to community services district is the recommended action. This map shows the two parcels highlighted in red being consolidated, and the lot to the west is currently zoned Community Services District, and the lot to the east is currently zoned as Medium Density Residential District. So without a rezoning of the subject lands, this would create a split zoning scenario. So rezoning the site to Community Services District to proactively avoid future land use compliance issues can be viewed as consistent with Council Strategic Plan 1.9. So actively pursue opportunities to remove obstacles to success, innovation, and incremental development while ensuring regulatory compliance. So it is recommended through the Municipal Planning Commission that City Council approve bylaw number 4778 to rezone Lot 14, Block D, Plan 991151 to Community Services District.
Thank you. I will now call the public hearing for bylaw 4778 to order. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium and state your name. For a second time, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium and state your name. For a third and final time, if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium and state your name. Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through the chair to Manager Sissons, can you please tell me where this is? I had a hard time finding photographs or a drone photo. And if I'm ignorant, I'm sorry. Nobody knows where it is? Okay, good.
Yes, so through the chair, it's over on kind of the eastern edge of Riverside. So you can see the block area to the north is the railway tracks.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, I will declare this public hearing closed.
Thanks, Your Worship. I move that council gives second reading to bylaw 4778, a bylaw of City of Medicine Hat to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the subject lands from medium-density residential district to community services district.
I'll second.
Any debate? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. And that's passed unanimously. Up next, item 9.2, bylaw.
Your Worship,
Oh,
I just want to move a third reading if I can.
sure.
Thank you. So, Your Worship, at this time, I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4778.
Second.
Any discussion on third reading? Seeing none, we'll vote on third reading. Thank you for the reminder, Councillor Hirsch. And that also passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll open up item 9.2, bylaw 4784 to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the subject lands from medium-density residential district to low-density residential district. And once again, we have with us Robert Sissons, Manager Planning and Development Services, to provide an introduction. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm here to present a brief summary of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 4784, a rezoning of Lot 4, Block 82, Plan 63M to low-density residential district. I'm just wondering if we can get the presentation queued up. So again, as mentioned earlier, our role within Planning and Development Services as the regulator is to review applications, understand those technical constraints, and provide a recommendation through the Municipal Planning Commission to City Council for a decision. So the land use bylaw amendment is for the rezoning of the subject site from medium-density residential district to low-density residential district. An existing house was demolished previously, and then an application for a multiple unit residential development was withdrawn in 2021. So currently the lot is vacant and has been for a couple of years. There has been interest in the site to be developed as a single detached house. So with redevelopment, this is not an uncommon occurrence where a developer will take a risk to see if there's an opportunity for a more intensive project, and sometimes that market isn't cooperative and not there, and they look to reposition the property for alternative options. So under the current land use bylaw, single detached houses are not allowed in the medium density residential districts, which is the reason for this amendment by the applicant. And rezoning to RLD is consistent with the municipal development plan policies in established areas that incremental development is the appropriate approach to redevelopment. And if the market does not support the site making the leap to that next level, the next best option is to see the value of the site maximized under the current existing development form. So any technical concerns will be addressed through the development permit stage, which is the next step subsequent to council's decision on rezoning. This is just a map of the zoning for the surrounding area. As you can see, adjacent land use districts include low-density residential district surrounding the site and to the north, east, and further to the west. Mixed-use districts immediately to the west and south, and open space to the southwest. So rezoning the site to low-density residential district to allow development to proceed would align with council's strategic plan of 6.8. While thus may not be considered the highest and best use of the land, there is value in seeing it being redeveloped to what the current market is able to support. Here's an aerial overview of the site. And then looking south from 5th Street southeast. Looking north from 6th Street southeast. Looking west from the adjacent lot on the sidewalk. And then looking east from the adjacent lot on the sidewalk. So it is recommended through the Municipal Planning Commission that City Council approve bylaw number 4784 to rezone Lot 4, Block 82, Plan 636M to low-density residential district.
All right, I will now call the public hearing for bylaw 4784 to order and ask if there is any member of the public who wishes to speak for or against this bylaw. Please come down to the podium, state your name. If there are any members of the public who wish to come down and speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium and state your name. For a third and final time, if there are any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this bylaw, please come down to the podium and state your name. This bylaw received first reading on April 17th and was advertised in accordance with our bylaws on April 15th and April 22. Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Through the chair to Manager Sissons, I'm just curious, in the case that the rezoning goes forward, if there's any rules in the neighborhood on the hill in regards to looking like other houses on the street. I know there's a bit of a character home appeal that goes with these streets, and was curious if there's any compliance that would have to be considered when building on this lot. I know it's a bit of a future thinking question, but just curious.
So through the chair, this site is actually just outside of a area redevelopment plan, so there are no statutory plans at the neighborhood level that would apply, which typically is where you might see neighborhood guidelines or that type of thing. There's no restrictive covenants on it that would stipulate any architectural controls. So based on that, it would just default to whatever architectural controls we would have within the land use bylaw. And that would generally be just restricted to, it should look residential, and we would want to see it finished off in an appropriate manner. But we don't dictate that it has to be a certain color of siding or a certain material or anything like that.
Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm not too surprised, to be honest, that there's no objection to bringing back to a single-family dwelling. One of the things I do want to point out, though, is that there was, when this came to the level of being a fourplex as proposed, there was quite a bit of objection and feeling in terms of, you know, talking about parking and all that kind of stuff, and I certainly appreciate it, but I think one of the things that I just want to state here is that there is a desire of this council and councils previous to have some densification within the community. And I think in all areas of the community, quite frankly, and I just want to reiterate that we will entertain other applications in the future that will have some density to it, and I, for one, am welcoming of that. It is a way of saving a little bit of the urban spread, if you will, and I talk about talking both sides of my mouth, and I do it on purpose because there is some eyesight to have brownfield developments with a bit of a guarded review of greenfield developments. So if we really want to be a future destination and a community of choice, we need to have choices. And so I do support this. I'm not surprised we're going back to single family and that there's no opposition, but I will be supporting it.
We're in public hearing.
You,
That's okay. I am about to. Seeing no other speakers, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 4784 closed. Can I get a motion for the bylaw?
you certainly can. I move that council gives second reading to bylaw 4784, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the subject lands from medium density residential district to low density residential district.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Okay. Seeing none, we'll vote on second reading. And that's unanimous.
Your worship, I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4778.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. That's unanimous, and bylaw 4784 is passed.
Thank you, your worship. I made an error when I stated the third, so 4784 is what I meant. Thank you.
Unfinished business, item number 10 is bylaw 4779, 2023 property tax bylaw. And we will have an introduction by the Director of Finance, Lola Barda.
Thank you, and good evening, Your Worship and members of council. So last council, I provided some information on the 2023 property tax. Back again to provide some additional information, as well as do another review of the scenarios and maybe provide a little bit more clarity for council to consider. And in addition to that, request approval for establishing the 2023 property tax rates. So I do want to talk a little bit about the process for setting tax rates. We do not formally have a property tax policy, but in 2021, we developed principles and guidelines to provide a general approach to setting property taxes, and this was based on a framework of consistent principles, administrative guidelines, and key factors. So these principles and guidelines were used to set the tax rates. It helped us understand the results compared to the previous year. So we were looking to ensure that the changes are reasonable from year to year. We also looked at mitigating the tax rate impact to property owners. And we want to understand the key factors that shift the tax burden. And you'll see that when we start talking about the scenarios and go through the scenarios. So as we start adjusting things such as the distribution or the tax ratio, you can see that that burden will shift to the other class. And we just want to provide awareness to that. So property taxes, setting property taxes requires judgment with multiple key factors to consider. And these would include balancing the interests of the overall community. And again, just being aware that when we do make changes, that it may, if we're providing a benefit to one tax class, it may shift the burden to another tax class. We want to make sure that we're aligning with city's strategic plan and vision, fair and equitable distribution of the tax burden, and making sure that it's affordable and comparable to other municipalities. I do want to also just bring to light, there was some discussion on the economic and social impact. There was a question at last council meeting. So it is difficult to determine what extent property tax influences behaviors when contemplating location or development decisions. Property taxes play a part, but there are also many other factors that are to be considered. So for a business, these might include land costs, transportation costs, proximity to market, proximity to similar services, availability of serviced and appropriately zoned lands. Services and labor pools would also play into that. For residential, the factors that may be considered would be affordable housing. What does the job market look like? The schools and the amenities. Really looking at that standard or quality of life. We also talked a little bit about lowering property taxes for multifamily units and whether this would provide a benefit to the renters. Rental rates are mainly market-driven and are based on or impacted by vacancy rates. So for instance, rental rates may be higher when vacancy rates are lower, and therefore lowering the property taxes may not have an impact on the rental rates. So I know we took a look at this last time, but I did want to just kind of remind Council of some of the changes that have happened from 2022 to 2023. So we did see an overall market change of 4.5%, and that was mainly due to higher sales valuation. And again, a reminder that this reflects the market valuations at July 2022. Assessment growth actually came in at 2.1%. We had a budget of 1%, and so that was an increase of 1.1% over budget. And I just want to walk through the impact of growth. So the growth that a municipality experiences results in additional revenue for the municipality and does not impact existing taxpayers, as the additional revenue is collected from new construction or development. So I've got a very simple example on the slide here on the chart to the right. So in year one, we've got 3 houses that have the same assessment value. The municipal tax levy is $750, and each house pays $250. In year 2, let's assume that there's no tax increase, but 1 additional home is built. Each house still pays $250, but now the municipality will collect $1,000. So revenues increase, but there's no tax increase for the existing property tax owners. So in 2023, because we did not budget for the additional growth, we do have an opportunity to increase property tax revenue up to $1.1 million for this unbudgeted assessment growth. So we did look at these scenarios last time, and I do want to just provide some clarity here. So I'm not going to go into great detail. We did do that last time, but I do want to highlight a few things here. So again, this is for the median taxpayer. Not all properties or tax payers will see an increase or a decrease in their rates. Just a few things to note on the charts. The third column from the end shows the municipal impact only. The second column from the end shows the total tax impact. So this includes the education and the Cypress View Foundation. You will see that that is lower than the municipal, and the reason for that is because the education requisitions did not change from prior year. And so as we apply that to a larger tax base, that amount will reduce. So the scenarios on this slide, scenarios 1 to 3, do not include a revenue increase. So this is based on the council-approved property tax revenue budget of 84.8 million. Scenario 1 looks at keeping the tax distributions the same. And so in this example, you can see that single-family municipal tax impact is $87, multifamily is a decrease of $169, and non-residential is an increase of $135. So in this scenario, the tax impact shifts more so to the single-family and non-residentials. Scenario 2 is keeping the tax ratios the same. So in this scenario, we've got single-family at $86, multifamily at $313, and non-residential at $60. So in this scenario, the tax impact shifts more to the multifamily. Scenario 3 is increasing the mill rate equally at 3% for all tax classes. So for single family, that's an increase of $55, multifamily $222, and non-residential at $448. So again, this shifts the impact to non-residential. We did provide 2 additional scenarios. So scenarios 4A and 4B look at increasing the revenue from the additional growth. So in these scenarios, we're looking at taking a property tax increase, an increase in our property tax revenue for the new assessment growth that was not budgeted for. So in scenario 4A, the revenue increase is 1.1 million. This would capture 100% of the new assessment growth. The municipal tax increase for all tax classes is at 4%. This was what was approved in the budget. So in this scenario, you can see that single family is at 85, multifamily at 352, and non-residential at 623. So the tax impact shifts more so towards multifamily and non-residential. Scenario 4B is looking at a revenue increase of 508,000. So this captures some of the growth, but also shifts a portion to non-residential class. And the reason that we've provided this scenario is that a large part of the growth was attributed to the non-residential class. So in this scenario, single family is $76, multifamily $314, and non-residential at $433. So in this scenario, the city would receive additional tax revenue, and the municipal tax impact is shared across all tax classes.
Councillor Hirsch, do you want to ask your question while the screen is up?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Lola, through the chair. And just, and I think this is actually the graph that I asked for, was just to say, what would the impact be on the tax ratio for non-res? And the reason I'm asking is I do see a subtle, but yet striking, subtle increase to, in the last few years, to the tax ratio going higher. And my position's going to be, if we are going to be, want some growth in the community, it means we want to be able to attract businesses to the community. It is a absolute identifier of what kind of feeling and vibe, if you will, that the City of Medicine Hat's trying to extend to people that decide to move to this community. So I guess is that, so 2.38 is the 2023, but I guess what my question was, what back at the last meeting, what would have it needed to take to get to the 2.32 for us to stay at least par where we were at? And maybe it just wasn't, I apologize if it wasn't a takeaway, but that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, through the chair. So are you asking the question, if I go back to this slide, the 2.32 is in scenario 2, but in this example, it does not take into account any additional revenue.
Right, and so my question is, and for those out in the viewing public and in the gallery, the reality is we still run a deficit. Right now, I think the tune is $9 million. We have a funding shortfall. So obviously, it's incumbent upon the city of any new money that's able to come in from new residents and new growth, if you will, that isn't taxed on the taxpayer is probably some money that we would want to be able to utilize to make up our deficit. So it is important to me, and I think it should be important to all Hatters in regards to, in terms of our deficit and be able to kind of bridge that gap. But what I'm trying to get and ascertain and understand is what would it take for us to stay static with the non-res ratio and have the new growth?
I know we ran a scenario like that, I just don't have it in front of me. Just trying to see if there was one that we did like that. If we tried to keep it at 2.32, what's going to end up happening is more is going to shift to multifamily and single family. So based on that, you're probably looking at single family going closer to $100, multifamily closer in the high 300s, almost close to 400 for that scenario to happen. So as you're shifting that tax ratio down, the burden is going to shift to your single family and multifamily.
Just to follow up, Your Worship, so, sorry, Lola, can you, so I know you're talking about is gonna go to X amount. What I read, even with, for example, item number or scenario, I think it was 4B, even with that type of analysis, I think it's just important for people to understand when it does go up, it's not a lot of money, say, because of the sheer number of residents and residential people. We're talking of potentially, I think, $20 if I'm adding this up right, or maybe, sorry, but what I'm looking for is the amount of money that would be going up to the non-res is pretty tangible in regards to $276 versus $86 between the different scenarios, which is pretty material relative to $1 or $2 a month relative to the resident. I think it's just important for people to understand that, you know, we talk about small business being the lifeblood of the community. With that, without commerce and business, we can't generate wealth, and then if we can't generate wealth, that means we can't provide social programs, and if we can't, so it kind of just goes from there. So I think it's just important for us to understand I get it, no matter what you cut in some areas, go somewhere else, but thank you for that. I just was looking kind of for that one piece, so thanks.
Is your comment about the, Councillor Sharps?
Sorry, and I might be blind, so just bear with me here. So on April 17th, we made a motion that directs administration to bring forward information to today's meeting in support of other tax rate scenarios for our consideration. I've gone page to page and I don't see any different tax scenarios. Am I missing that?
Through the chair, no, you're not. We could run scenarios all day long. Administration felt that these scenarios that we've provided to council provide the best cases.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Sharps?
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm slightly disappointed with that answer. Nothing personal, Lola, but I guess if we made a motion asking for some additional scenarios, I guess in my heart of hearts, that's what I was hoping to have. But page for page, this is identical to what we've already pushed back to May 1st, because we weren't thrilled with what we were seeing. And I'm going to just speak up as a small business owner. My building's already tripled in utilities. It's killing me. So this isn't an open hearing, Caleb. So, yeah, I'm just saying that I appreciate Councillor Hirsch bringing this up last time. So I'm disappointed that we don't see another scenario there as requested. So I do recall getting my hand slapped a few weeks ago saying, make sure we make motions and give direct information requests, city manager. So I believe we've done that. And I know I'm even more disappointed because we have to pass this today. May 1st is the deadline, I believe. Okay.
City Manager Mitchell.
Through the chair, I'm trying to recall, but I can't. And I would say that Managing Director, how do you say your last name, sir? Barta is correct. We could run scenarios, and probably it was my misstep of not asking clear enough direction of what council wanted to see. Because, you know, Lola's right, we could run scenarios all day, but we just need to know what exactly you want to see. So that was probably an error on direction part.
So I'm not even sure that what it was included in our minutes is 100% accurate, because it doesn't include the social and economic impact, but it does say additional information to the May 1st City Council meeting in support of other tax rate scenarios for council's consideration. So.
Just further, I appreciate the ownership on that. I really do. I'm just slightly disappointed.
Through the chair, and the other question we wrestled with too, and I do believe it came up at administration committee, is that the social implications are very broad, and what is your definition of social implications? Not an excuse, but really, until we had a clear direction of what those parameters are, it's a bit challenging to wrap your arms around it.
And maybe we can just take this as an aside, but I would ask City Manager to read the motion that Councillor Omi and Councillor Canoto made, and just ask what you would like in future as further clarification, so we don't make the same mistake. And that can be in the future, it doesn't have to be now.
Councillor Canoto.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Through the chair to Manager Barta. So I'm curious, this is more for my understanding to make sure I'm comprehending the information correctly. So in order for us to capitalize on the unanticipated income or revenue, and I get those two words confused, but the excess revenue that we hadn't anticipated, in order for us to capitalize on that, we have to go back and redistribute across the entire community, like across all of the sources of taxation across the community. We can't just say, we've got this extra revenue, let's take advantage of that and keep it separate. Does that make, anyways, I'll hand it over to you, and then hopefully I can keep asking questions.
Thank you for the question, through the chair. Yeah, so when you're looking at, the revenue that we need to collect, that does need to be distributed across all tax classes. And again, you know, aligning with our principles and our guidelines, we want to make sure that that distribution is fair and equitable. And so we do make sure that it is spread amongst all the classes.
Mayor Clark, can I follow up? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, that's very helpful. I think that in a perfect world, my brain wants to go, okay, we have this 4% increase that we are applying to our residential class, and we've got some excess revenue. Let's keep it the same. Let's keep it at 4%, no increases, decreases, let's keep it level and still capitalize on that revenue. And what you're telling me is it's not really possible, it doesn't work that way. We have to go back and redistribute and then take advantage of the excess revenue. You kind of have to go back and.
Not quite. I think that 4A is the scenario that you're describing. If we kept the 4% as is, because of the growth in the city, it would actually result in about $1 million more revenue if we kept each of the tax rates that we contemplated at budget time the same. Is that your question? Yes, okay. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, those comments are great. Yeah, thank you.
Managing Director Egert.
Through the chair, thank you. And I am enjoying this discussion because it's exactly what we expected. I do want to point out just two things on that scenario 4B. The first one, when you see the yellow highlighted on the municipal tax increase, 3.9, 3.9, and then 2.7. We had committed to council as part of our assumptions that that would be a 4% increase. So those are less than what we had included in our management assumptions and that council had approved. But more importantly, if you look on the right-hand column, this is now the total tax impact that includes not only the municipal rate, but the education rate, and then also the Cypress View Foundation. And those tax impact for that particular class, so for single family, it's 2.7%. For multifamily, it's 2.7%, and for non-residential, it's 0.4%. So I just want to make that point as we go through these scenarios. And maybe one last point, when you look at the municipal impact, the municipal one of $76 contemplates a median house value. That median house value is somewhere, 300,000 approximately. Whereas the multifamily and the non-residential, we used a $1 million representative property. So that's why those amounts, when you look at the municipal amount, look so much higher. It's because we're comparing it to a $1 million property versus a single family. It would be a median home value in Medicine Hat of approximately 300,000.
Councillor Robbins, is your comment as well, or question on this area, or just, okay. So we'll finish off the presentation, and you can leave your name on, I'll just remember, okay.
Okay, so our request to council is to give second and third reading to scenario 4B. That would have an increase of 3.9% for single family and multifamily, and an overall tax increase for both those classes at 2.7%. 2.7% increase for for non-residential, with an overall tax increase of 0.4%. Amend the 2023 tax revenue budget by $508,000 to account for that additional physical growth, and adopt the revised Education City View Foundation and designated industrial property requisitions. And that's all.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, thank you, Director Barda. I guess that when we had our original presentation, this has come up several times, we're given a list of cities and it shows where our tax ratio for non-residential and residential is. And so we've been given that information a lot, that specific number. And I just want you to tell me, so I really understand. I see what it means for a $1 million property, and I thank you for that, Managing Director Agard. But I really want to know this tax ratio. You mentioned something last time we were here about how moving one pulls that ratio around. I feel like, Councillor Hirsch, that I feel like when I look at those statistics and I see our ratio is high, and I don't think that's good for business. But can you just tell me a little bit more about where the tax ratio comes from, what is the significance, and how does moving things around affect it?
So I think the particular chart that you're looking for, non-residential to residential single family, is on page 76 of our package, just so you can have it in front of you when you're speaking to it.
Thank you. I don't have the page numbers, but is it the chart, the graph?
It's the chart, and we're the red.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, so part of our guidelines, we are looking at ensuring that ratio does come closer to 2. However, when we start comparing it to other municipalities, you can see that we are within that range. Again, we don't know the reasoning behind what other municipalities do when they set their rates. We do know that some are looking at bringing that ratio higher. And again, this is based on 2022 because we don't have the 2023 information yet from other municipalities. But this is really the ratio comparing it, what it is compared to non-residential. So we're looking at, in 2022, as 2.3 times more than what the residential rate was. And yeah, so that's the reasoning why. And the reason that it's going higher in when we look at where we are today is we've got a larger residential assessment base. And so as that number grows, that gap or that, I guess it's a gap, when you're doing that comparison to where non-residential and residential is going to be a wider gap. And so that's the reasoning why it's increasing in 2023 to 2.38.
I would also add that, which I don't think is reflected in this graph, that the machinery and equipment tax is not charged by this municipality, but is charged by Wood Buffalo, Strathcona County, and Grand Prairie, who are closer to 2 and even under 2. So the impact of, I'm not sure what the impact of that would be on what their businesses have to pay when they're paying taxes on materials and equipment.
Yes, thanks for pointing that out. I don't believe the machinery and equipment amount is included in the non-residential tax rate. It is? Oh, okay, it would be. So included in that non-residential tax rate is the machinery and equipment amount. So that would play a part in why it may be higher in some municipalities.
Sorry, Managing Director Egert?
Yes, through the chair. So we do have a component of machinery and equipment, that is included in the assessment. However, when we actually apply a separate machinery and equipment tax, this council, previous councils has committed not to charge machinery and equipment as a separate tax in this community. So through the chair, Mayor Clark, you're exactly right. When you look at those communities that do charge machinery and equipment, typically those are centers with a lot of heavy industrial. I look at Wood Buffalo, Strathcona County, Grand Prairie as well. Those are communities that have elected to tax those heavy industries in the area. And therefore, when you look at that, that's a great observation, is that when you look at our normal tax ratio, with that additional M&E tax, they can afford to actually have a lower non-residential tax, and so the ratio comes down.
So sorry, I think I am confused about so when I'm looking at the non-residential tax rate for Airdrie, or let's say for Strathcona County, who does collect a machinery and equipment tax, is that tax already included in their non-residential tax rate that I'm seeing right there?
Yes, it is. So those amounts would be included in that non-residential tax rate. So if I can just point out as well, Lethbridge does not have machinery and equipment. Their non-residential tax rate is 2.49. And again, they're higher than where Medicine Hat is, both on non-residential and single family. So again, it depends on what their incentive is to do that and where they're shifting the burden of the tax. Just to also point out, sorry, I was looking at another one here. Red Deer as well. Again, they don't have the machinery and equipment, but they do have a higher amount that is going towards single family. So it just depends on the mix in the community. So if they have more industrial or commercial customers or more residential customers, they're going to determine how to distribute that tax amongst the taxpayers.
Okay. Councillor Hirsch.
Caught me red-handed as I was asking to speak. So I always, I'll say it, I cringe a little bit a lot of times when we get this slide every year, because it's so loaded with gray area when we compare other municipalities. And I know And I appreciate that you putting it out there because I think it's probably relatively good to see, but again, it's a really fuzzy snapshot. And for me, it's not even necessarily that graph in as much as the trending within the city of Medicine Hat. And that's what I look for, is where's the ratio headed? And is that something that we consciously decide? And so for me, I see where we kind of dipped. I think it was maybe 2021, I think. I don't have it in front of me. But yet we still see a little bit of a climb. And I just want to reiterate, that's kind of what I look for. And just going forward, that's kind of what I would hope. And I certainly need to get the support of all our councillors to kind of go in terms of what I'm trying to achieve, but that's kind of my position. Thanks.
Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. The slide that's in front of us and slides like that, I do agree with Councillor Hirsch. There's a lot of factors that play into different municipalities and their tax ratios. I am a supporter of bringing economy here to Medicine Hat and keeping economy and industry here. So I know it's a tough decision, but I do believe that the non-residential tax guys, they need a bit of a break, as opposed to, not that we all don't need a break, but I'd rather see a little benefit for them and for our industry possibly. It's, for me to look at this and compare us to Airdrie or Lethbridge, I don't even see how we can. But those are just my thoughts. Thanks, Lola.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, I didn't know if we were debating the motion or asking questions at this time. It sounds like we're doing a little both. Is that
Good
fair to say?
point.
Okay.
So it is kind of getting into debate, but we don't actually have a motion on the table.
Well, I'll wait until we have the motion, which I'll read momentarily. The only thing I will point out, and all the conversation is worthy of being said out loud. Certainly, the observation I make on this particular chart, which refers to the non-residential and residential ratios, you can see in all municipalities with the exception of Wood Buffalo, has that ratio has been moving in the same direction across all of the municipalities, with, again, the exception of Wood Buffalo, slight decrease from 21 to 22, and then of course Airdrie stayed the same. So if we were offside of that, not that we want to be in the middle of the pack, but that's not a bad place to land. And I think the comment around gray area is well said, and I've heard that many times, and it is difficult, but that's why those terms, Director Barta, can you remind me, what do we call them, the term that help us determine the ratios, at the beginning of your slide?
The framework.
Framework. So that framework was introduced only a few years ago, and that was because of this kind of conversation where councils, it wasn't that staff kind of played this arbitrary game and brought a ratio forward, and as long as it was close to where it was, the councils of the day would pass it. But we had taxpayers, both residential and non-residential, asking what are the leverages or levers that you pull or push to determine, and these were there, but they were written down, and they're a guideline, exactly as indicated there, and how relative they are to our municipality. If we overlaid this to Lethbridge or Grand Prairie, it would have a very different effect. So I'm very comfortable with what's being proposed, but I'll wait for my final comments when we get to the motion.
Any further questions for Director Barta? All right.
Ready for the motion, Your Worship?
I am.
So the motion, I'm assuming, references scenario 4B. Is that correct, Director Barta? Does the motion reference 4B? I'm assuming it does?
It is, yes.
Okay. I move that council give second reading to bylaw 4779, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat, to authorize council to impose a property tax for the year 2023 and to exempt certain property from taxation for the year 2023. I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw, pardon me, that's the first part, correct?
Yep. you just have to do second reading at this point.
I'll second.
Okay, debate. Councillor Robbins.
All right, I want to thank Director Barta, as always, for tolerating my questions and giving me better information. And I'm reflecting a lot on what you said last time, in that the most of the growth was within non-residential, and so shifting the benefit of that to non-residential, it's the balance, right? Your property is worth more, but maybe your tax could be less, and it kind of evens out that impact on them. So I became a little bit fixated on the tax ratio. I think philosophically, I still think it should be below 2, and the more we get back to that. But when I voted for taxes, I didn't say that was a priority, and I should have. And so you can only prepare budgets based on what we say and decide as a group. And so that's something that I'd like to revisit, and if other council members, obviously, in this discussion want to revisit as well, I would be happy to have that discussion another time with another motion other than the one we have. I do see, however, when I look at the motions that, or the scenario 4B, that the mill rate change for non-residential is the lowest, if I'm not mistaken, while still retaining some of the excess revenue, unbudgeted revenue. It is still the municipal tax impact, which we had budgeted at 4%, is lower for everybody. Not a lot lower for for a single family and multifamily, but still coming in under that 4%, and leaves the non-residential down at 2.7%. And I think if we can't shift the tax ratio at this point with the scenarios we have, that this is the one that sort of addresses that. I think growth in non-residential and the tax rate, or mill rate change, sorry, to be balanced. So I am supporting the motion of Councillor Dumanowski.
Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I appreciate knowing that 4B will allow a slight reduction in taxation to the general community at different rates between the tax classes. I also appreciate that there's a portion of the unanticipated revenue that we can put back to our deficit, as Councillor Hirsch alluded to earlier. So the goal, I think, in any of our decisions is balance, and I appreciate what Councillor Robbins has said. It would be nice if we can get to a point where we are competitive for our business community. Overall, I think 4B makes sense. I still have a lot to learn in regards to the details of the math, but I think comparing it to the other scenarios, it makes the most sense.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, I think I bundled some of my comments earlier in my question, but I am pleased with what's being proposed. I know nobody likes taxes, and I think one of the things I reflect on and heard from the public over the years is value for money. They recognize that tax increases are essential from the standpoint of keeping our business units going forward, keeping our service delivery front and center, creating opportunities, keeping a vibrant community even more vibrant, require tax increases. When I think about and reflect on the past year or two's conditions economically and otherwise, and I look at the current state of affairs, I'm actually overly pleased that we are able to keep the burden down to 2.7% for single-family, multifamily, and less than 0.5% for non-residential. It is a tip of the ratio toward non-residential, but it's a nod in the same direction as most other municipalities, as was identified in the slide. That doesn't justify it, but it certainly is probably the same pressures we're feeling are being felt by other municipalities. So for every reason, I want to commend staff, and I'm pleased that we're able to bring this forward. So I'm wholeheartedly endorsing the motion.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, through the chair. I just had a quick question on the motion. especially just the last sentence, and to exempt certain properties from taxation for the year 2023. Can we just, what taxes or what properties are being exempted from taxation?
So I don't have a list of the specific properties, but these would be properties that would be exempt under the property tax regulations and legislation.
Can you just say that out loud, so like just people that are watching understand what this is? I think we said churches, maybe?
Oh, for example.
Thank you.
So this is exempt from taxation. So it's not exempt from being assessed. So we need to, but it's exempt from actually paying taxes. So that's a great example.
Churches would be the only thing that's exempt?
There's some other ones. I think Sue would even have a list of that, or city assessor.
I think just for clarity and transparency for our public that watches, because it
Okay.
says exemption, and I think it's important they know if we're increasing some of the rates, what, you know, when we say that things are exempt, what is exempt, so.
Could I ask city assessor just to come and maybe share some examples of what the exempt from taxation categories would include?
And while we're waiting, Councillor Knodel has a question on this same topic. And did you as well? No?
I just was curious why it's important to state, it reads as if we are exempting certain property from taxation rather than, and to, I don't know, if there might be a more neutral word in regards to.
Like, because they're already exempted under the MGA?
Correct.
Not all
Why
of them will be automatically. We'll let our city assessor speak to the matter.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that the bylaw states machinery and equipment is exempt from taxation. So that's one that is highlighted in the bylaw, as well as the other examples of, like you've stated, according to the Municipal Government Act, there are properties that are exempt and stated within here, such as properties owned by the municipality, except for other properties that are listed here as far as electric power system, telecommunication system, et cetera.
Do you have, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, through the chair to Sue. And can you just help me understand why it's important to state this when we make a change rather than rely on what we understand about these exemptions? Do they not apply every time?
Yeah, so the machinery and equipment tax is something that we have to specifically exempt from taxation. And Councillor Hyder has an example, but I'm not sure, is the exemptions from taxation in here are just the following, and then it goes on to list machinery and equipment. Management body requisition taxes and designated industrial property requisition taxes. So those are the three. Yeah.
Thank you through the chair. And then there's another piece too, that provincial and federal payment in lieu of taxes, or they call them something different here in Alberta, sorry. But then it's almost treated like an accounts receivable, so that's another piece as well. And currently, they've limited how much they're going to pay on that, so there's another piece. It's quite broad, I would say. Did you want to?
Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, through the chair. Agriculture, Sue, would that be exempt? Any agricultural, Aurora,
Sue's going, oh God.
things like that?
There are farm buildings that are 100% exempt, yes.
Okay, good. Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you, and through the chair, I just had a couple of comments. I appreciate administration's reminder that every shift from one class moves the burden onto another class, and that we're striving to be fair and equitable when making these decisions. And I just wanted to make a comment to Mayor Clark's question about social impacts from our last meeting. I think everyone on council and many in the community are aware of the need for affordable housing. And I'd like to think that there are decisions that we can make around this table, whether it's through zoning or property taxes or other policy decisions that will create the outcome that we desire. Last year at this time, I asked the question, and I continue to ask it, not just here, but at other tables that I'm at in the province and in the city, if there's a way or levers that we can pull as a city council that can improve those outcomes in the community. At one point, I think over a decade ago, I may have thought that reducing the rate on multifamily dwellings would have an effect on housing affordability, but I think the market has changed, and I'm not sure that that one action alone would give us what we're looking for. But I'm hopeful that the continued work in the city and with other groups looking at this, that we may find a solution. But I'm not sure that changing a single class of property tax is the answer at this time. I support this motion, but I'm hopeful that we'll continue to look at ways to make and create more and support more affordable housing in the community.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you, through the chair. I just want to say that I think the hard work was kind of done. We kind of sent admin away and we said 4% is the guideline. So we already kind of approved the pot of money. And so now I think they've done a great job, and I want to commend staff for doing such a great job kind of trying to find the balance between non-residential, multifamily, and single. And I agree that we can't compare ourselves to other communities. We should just compare ourselves to this community year after year. That's a great point, because every community is uniquely different. In the next presentation on our package, slide 67, which we haven't got to yet, but if we're concerned about the property taxes and we're kind of 0.1% here or 0.2 there, I get it's important, but we as council, we have all these priorities and we expect admin to deliver those priorities. If we go to that slide that shows the coin, maybe if we have to decide to make the coin smaller. So this is a tough job that admin's trying to say, listen, this is the money that we need to support our community and support council's strategic priorities. So I just want to say I support this. It's a tough one. Like everyone else, I'm a taxpayer. I think that they found the right spot on this to actually take our growth and help us grow through that, and also increasing our rates. So I speak in support of this, as Councillor Dubanowski said, wholeheartedly.
All right, seeing no further speakers, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous.
Your Worship, at this time, I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4779.
I'll second it.
Any further deliberations? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. And it passes.
Your Worship, I move that council adopts the Education Cypress View Foundation and designated industrial property requisitions in the 2023 Municipal Services Operating Budget.
I'll second.
Any questions on that one? Debate, seeing none, we will vote. That passes unanimously.
Through the chair, I move that council amends the 2023 tax revenue budget for the new physical growth by increasing to $85,304,278 from $84,796,000.
I will second.
Discussion, questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. Councillor Sharps? Okay, that's unanimous. Now we'll move on to item 10.2, bylaw 4780, 2023 supplementary property tax bylaw. And the sponsor is Corporate Services. I don't think there's a presentation on this one.
Okay, Your Worship, I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4780, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to authorize council to impose a 2023 supplementary property tax.
I will second.
Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, we'll vote. Sorry, Councillor Hirsch.
So, Your Worship, I think it's just sometimes important for people to know what we're voting on and what a supplemental is. And I'll just read from the briefing note. This is basically with regard to any enhancements, any builds under construction, anything that's happening right now, and I quote, "Due to the increase in assessment value due to newly constructed buildings, additions or renovations completed and or occupied in the current year." So this is what this has got to do with. Thank you.
And seeing no further speakers, we'll vote. That's unanimous.
I move that council give second reading to bylaw 4780.
I will second.
Discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on second reading. That's unanimous.
Your Worship, I move that council give unanimous consent to have third reading of bylaw 4780 at this meeting.
I will second.
Okay, we'll vote on that motion. That's unanimous. We can go for third reading.
Okay, I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4780.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on third and final reading. That's unanimous, and bylaw 4780 is passed. We'll now move on to committee and commission business arising. 11.1, Economic Land and Strategic Planning and Development Committee. Would you like to share any meeting highlights?
Sure. Do you want me to make the motion first for the minutes or no?
Yeah, I thought we changed it so the meeting highlights were going to be first, but
Okay.
you're right. We can do the minutes first.
Okay. I move that council adopts the minutes of the Economic Land and Strategic Planning and Development Committee meeting held on April 25th, 2023, as presented for the corporate record.
I'll second.
And any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll vote on accepting the minutes. That's unanimous. Councillor Van Dyke, do you have any highlights from the meeting?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I just wanted to draw the public's attention to the 2023 incentive program budget reallocation. So there is some funds that were being reallocated from one area of incentives to another, and those will be, the advertising will begin tomorrow through to May 14th. So please check out the website for more information on that.
Thank you. And so there are two information items there, and one of them is with respect to the 2023 incentive program. Moving on to 11.2, Public Services Committee, we have the meeting minutes from April 24th, 2023.
Your Worship, I move that council adopt the minutes of the Public Services Committee meeting held on April 24th, 2023, as presented for the corporate record.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. That passes. Councillor Robbins, do you have any highlights you want to share from Public Services meeting?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, it was, again, nothing but highlights at Public Services, but we didn't have any presentations this time, and so I thought it was going to be a short meeting, but it wasn't, because Managing Director Stout had a lot of updates to give us about things that people have been asking about in the community, so I won't highlight all of them, but the ones that I think are going to sort of I'm glad that we had a discussion of them right away, were the issues with Crestwood. I'm happy to report to the community, this is definitely, take notes, media, my children were able to go to swimming lessons today because I got a phone call and an email from Big Marvel, said just send them up here instead of Crestwood. And I believe that the opening of Crestwood is maybe next week or the week after. Am I right about that? I'm getting a nod, so just be patient. But my swimming lessons were able to be accommodated and people will be back in Crestwood soon, so that's very good news. The boiler was on hand to replace, it just needed to be installed. And the other thing that I think will be really important to note is the Echodale pond liner work. So we had an update as well about that, and it's going to delay the opening of the swimming pond by a couple of weeks from when it would normally be done, but that's necessary to make sure that the boat lake liner is secure and installed correctly, and there's not water leaching from one to the other. I've now forgotten the word, exfiltration, did I get it? So I think that's important for people to know, and everyone really enjoys Echodale in the summertime, and so there's gonna be a little bit of a delay, but we had some serious issues because of that liner problem last year that could only be fixed after thaw, and things have to dry out for that liner to be properly adhered. So we did receive some photos, so we understood what was happening and a bit of a plan moving forward, so I just thought I would highlight that. Thank you.
Do you want to mention the Heritage Pavilion as well?
Yes, I looked on the website today, the Heritage Pavilion building down in Strathcona Park that used to be available for booking by the public is now available again. And so the rates and descriptions and how many people it will fit are all available, and how to book is all available on the website. And the other thing I think people have been asking a lot about is at Big Marble Go Center, the playground. And you can see the equipment on the move there. And so there's some thought that will be finished in August of this year. And there'll be a brand new playground for kids to play on. Shaded playground, sheltered a bit from the wind.
Councillor Sharps?
I just had a question on the e-scooter. So 2 questions with e-scooters. Number 1, is that exclusionary to anybody else? Or like, is it only Bird that we have a contract with? So if another scooter company tried to come in, is that exclusionary?
Managing Director Stouth?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Sharp. We're in a trial period with Bird as we evaluate e-scooter usage. Second year of a trial period. There may be an opportunity to expand that after this second-year trial period is complete.
Perfect. I will just share that I had received some information that somebody had tried to open a business here, and they were told that they couldn't because the city did e-scooters. And I said, I think there's some erroneous information there. We don't do e-scooters. We're not in the business of e-scooters. Correct. So, but my second question is, in regards to e-scooters, I think I would like some further education from Bird as to what they're doing in terms of compliance, because I see these things all over the place. Some are on sidewalks, some are on roads, they're not wearing helmets, they're darting in and out of traffic. Where are they supposed to be, Managing Director? Are they supposed to be sidewalks, or I believe it's still supposed to be on the road, right?
Managing Director Stouth?
As far as the areas that they're in the city, they are geofenced right now. They'll shut down they are working in the downtown area in Crescent Heights. As far as them running on these sidewalks and or the streets, I'm going to have to check that information and get back to you, Councillor Sharps.
No problem. I'll just tell you what my information is, and maybe if it's wrong, you can correct us. My information is when you rent the Bird scooter, you agree to be on the street. and people are not on the street. So it's kind of scary sometimes watching them downtown. Like, not that, like, I think these are great, but if they're supposed to be on the street, they need to be on the street. Because, I mean, sometimes the downtown sidewalks get a little compacted. So I just witnessed a little incident earlier today, so.
Councillor Knodel?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Likely through the chair to Managing Director South. There, on the bird map, we've got it geofenced, as you just mentioned, to downtown and Crescent Heights. However, they are dropped off in Southridge, and I see them parked in Southridge and near the college. I'm just wondering how that works and how Southridge people can use the scooters.
Managing Director Stouth?
There was some confusion in the geofenced area. I don't know how lately you've seen them in Southridge, but that was a mistake in the geofencing on the scooters when they were brought here for year number 2. So we did have them scattered about. We are trying to control the areas that we are allowing the scooters in through this trial period, just to ensure that we are keeping them out of what we would define as high traffic or high hazard areas. So if you could let me know when you saw those in Southridge, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Mayor Clark, through the chair. I will have to see if they're still there, but I'm going to say it was very early on, and that if they're still there, then I'll take a picture and send it to you or email it to you or something along that line to see why and how and when.
Perfect. Seeing no further speakers and no further business, this meeting is adjourned.